Anybody else? Yeah, Dan. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where's that for you? There you go. All right, he wins the award for. He wins the husband award. Nobody's going to beat that. Shannon. Church camp, VBS, you mean, or church camp when you were a kid? Isn't that a great answer? Here in Dundee. So many people. Yeah, lot of adults speak glowingly about that and those times. There you go. Right, right. Freedom. How much is? So she raised a good question here. How much is freedom a part of being home? And how much is the lack of freedom or the removal of freedom, where you have to be a certain way, tell you that I'm not home? And we spend a lot of time. How much what percentage of our lives do we spend not being home? A lot. Anybody else? When or where? Todd.
I was in the Boundary Waters last summer, and it had been 40 years since I've been in the Boundary Waters. And I started walking through some woods that I was familiar with at that time. Man, yeah, I'm back home.
Yeah, there you go. Home is this fantastic word that has nothing to do with the structure, right? And it's such an important ponder for yourself before we start this particular Bible study. What is home? It has nothing to do. There's a house. There's houses. Those are not homes. Home is with this question we raise the concept of what home is. You guys know what it is. It's just almost indefinable, right? And then how important is it to the human existence? You can't even measure that, right? And yet we know. We eat, we sleep, we've got to take in water. We need to be home. We need to have some sense of home. When we lose that, it's terribly debilitating, right? And what Shannon said about freedom and what others have said about home, these are all incredibly important qualities that remind us of their. Well, then we're done for the night on that one. All right, so we're in Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 32. This is the prodigal son. A few words before we begin. Prodigal is never used in the parable. Prodigal is a Latin word. And so here's you've heard that phrase before, and a lot of people don't know what it means. It means to be wasteful. That's a prodigal. It means to be careless. It means to throw things away, to throw things of value away. Now, theologians that are more liberal than I am would say, well, it really means that you're being extravagant, that you're a big spender. And no, that's not very accurate. It really has a negative connotation. I mean, from the Latin, the Latin root. It means to be undisciplined, wasteful, careless. And so this phrase, even though it doesn't appear in Jesus' words tonight, got applied to one of the protagonists of this story. So we're going to break it down into three chunks. You know the story. If you don't, you should. Many years ago, I read it again for the 100th time, and I sat my Bible down and I decided that this parable is proof that Jesus Christ is God. Because in my mind, to my conclusion, there's no possible way that anybody could come up with this story without being God. That's what I would say. How about that for praise? I mean, you judge for yourself. But to me, I've studied this parable for, more than 30 years, and I'm never done with it. Now, how's that possible? You could say, well, you could do the same thing with Moby Dick or Great Gatsby or something like that, A War and Peace. I don't know, man. This one, it's only 20 verses long or whatever it is, and it never stops. There's so much there. And there's so much that isn't there, that you speculate about because it's your life. And it's just amazing. So we'll just take this in 3 little chunks, 11 through 16. Here's some things I'll ask you. Why does the prodigal leave? The prodigal commonly is the younger brother. Okay? We'll get into a little bit more of that near the end. But commonly, historically, the prodigal, the wasteful one, obviously, is the younger brother. Why does he leave? Why does he get lost? What does the father have to do to let him go? And in what way is the prodigal blessed? Now, there's 3 main characters in this parable. There's the father and there's the 2 sons. The father, quite obviously, is representative of God. Although that's not declared, that's what we infer. Clearly is what Jesus means. And then the 2 brothers are us, are examples of us. Either like tend to be an older tend to be like the older brother who appears later in the show, and somebody else might be more a history of being a younger brother. But it can also mean, and I encourage you to think in terms of how you are both. What parts of you are like the older brother? What parts of you are still like the younger brother? Like my relationship with food tends to be a little bit more like the younger brother, wasteful and not disciplined. I'll confess that sin to you. It's pretty obvious. So think about these questions and think about these kinds of mentalities as we work through this great parable. So 11 through 16. Then Jesus said, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me. So he divided his property between them. Now, it's been commonly pointed out that what the younger son is saying to his dad is, Dad, I can't wait for you to die. Give me my money now. I can't wait for it. I really want you. I want your money more than I want you. I want you to die so that I can get your money. I mean, it's a very fair way of evaluating what the son says to the father. And then we have to stop and ask, how would we react to our child, son or daughter, saying such a thing to us? Remember, the father represents God, right? What part of you does that? What part of you does that, has that kind of relationship or has done that with God in the past? Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me. So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country. And there he squandered his property in dissolute living. In other words, wild living. Okay? Rebellious, sinful living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. To a Jewish audience, this would indicate just complete, total degradation and failure, because pigs were unclean animals. Okay, you've reached the bottom. But even to the Greeks, okay, eating the food of the pigs you're not high renting that here. Verse 16. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. So why does the prodigal leave? Doth thy thinketh. What do you think? Why did he leave? Steve?
He wasn't happy with his current life, though.
He wasn't happy with his current life. It's a good start. Laura, what do you think?
Well, he didn't want to work. He wanted to play all day.
Okay, he didn't want to work on the farm. We're assuming, and we can get that assumption from later on in the parable, that this is a ranch, this is a working ranch, and you've got to tote that barge and lift that bale, right? Maybe he didn't want to do that a little bit. Why else? Let's go a little deeper. Frank.
Well, like many people, he was maybe very happy on the outside, but very unhappy on the inside.
That's an interesting thought, and maybe he wasn't even aware of that.
No.
We can paint this picture pretty well. What do you think, Kathy?
There were expectations on him that he didn't appreciate.
Perhaps. And why didn't he appreciate them?
Because guess they were expectations, and maybe he wasn't ready.
Or maybe he wanted to set his own expectations. And a little bit of that's a very interesting thought. Expectations. Who hasn't rebelled against that weight? Dan.
Well, I think it's possible he wasn't getting along with his older brother either, because at the end,
Yeah. You're speculating there, but I think brothers being brothers, it's not a bad speculation I think you're making there. But see what this great parable does. It allows us to think about those things. And that's what I'm encouraging you to do, to go beyond what's in black and white here. Because we've been there, right? It's very relatable. Susan, what were you going to say? Do you
I
remember?
was just going to say, because we don't really know the procedure at this point, so much of what I think of in history in the Bible is the first son
Yeah.
is the son.
Yeah.
He gets everything, kind of. So the second son is not happy with his position in the hierarchy.
Well, the first son is the one who gets the lion's share.
Right.
In many situations, not always, but in many situations, you wouldn't split it equally. That's what the inheritance, 50% would go to the oldest son, and the rest of the kids had to divide up the other 50%. That would be a common way of doing that, because it's the oldest son that gets that patriarchal society being what it was. So that didn't change. He's the second son, so he gets a lesser share, and he still wants his lesser share and to run away. Greg, why does he leave?
Because he doesn't want to have somebody else tell him what to do. He wants to do what he wants to do. He doesn't want to do what other people are telling him to do.
Okay, kind of building on the expectation thing. So you're kind of saying, I want to be free according to my terms and not somebody else's terms. Anybody in the story just yet here remembering that God is the Father here? Chad, what do you say, man?
Well, he gets his inheritance and he blows it all, and he's basically going to be homeless in this section that we're reading about.
Yeah.
Because he has nothing. He's
Yeah.
blowing it all on who knows what.
Yeah.
So now that he feels like he's nothing, he's going to hire himself out to be a slave, and then he starts crying about, woe is me.
Yeah. Well, wait, you don't go too fast, Chad. I got to reel you in. I got a whole program here, man. But why does he leave? You know? Yeah, Danny.
He wants a different way than what the Father is offering him. He sees what the Father has got on the table, and he wants a different plan.
Do you think he thinks it's unfair? Kind of building on some of the things you've talked about, that his existence is unfair. You think that he thinks his existence is lacking? Well, that's a definite yes, right? I mean, again, why does the prodigal leave? And we could remove this and say, why do we leave? Not just the prodigal. Why have we left? When we have left God, and we have, why did we do that? Because we think we're smarter than the Father? Is that a good answer? Right? Because we think we're entitled to something that we're not going to get from the Father? Maybe. Chris?
I think he's just plain bored. I doubt that he's been given any real responsibility, because his older brother's probably taken most of that. And I think he just wants anything that the world has to offer. He's also very naive.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know what's out there, but he thinks it's got to be better than just sitting there doing nothing.
Yeah, I learned the hard way that the line between being naive and being arrogant is just razor thin, because it cost me big time in my life at one point about 9 years ago. And I was like, holy cow. I can see where I was naive, and I can see where I was arrogant. And they were almost the exact same thing. You couldn't even split them. Todd, what are you gonna? As I was going through my list, you looked like you had a face of angst. Don't have that unless you want to be called upon, boy.
Who wants to live as a spare?
As a spare.
As a spare.
Well, Prince Harry doesn't.
I feel like a spare part. Apparently, Harry doesn't.
Yeah.
actually it's his wife.
Yeah. So he's got a life, but he's not very thankful for it. Why does the prodigal leave? All of these things. And as we make this list, as we work through it, I think we're seeing some of our own histories here, right? Also, please notice that this is a picture. What he wants to leave is heaven. This is a ranch belonging to the Father, right? He's leaving heaven. Why does he want to do that? He's leaving a relationship with his Father. Why does anybody ever want to do that? Because we think we can do better on our own. Pastor's wife, what were you going to say?
I think he just wants to get out of the shadow of his dad and his brother.
All right. He doesn't.
And he doesn't know that he's in heaven.
No, he doesn't know that there's blessings to find in that shadow. He's looking at it as if it's a shadow when really it's not. Don't we do the same thing? He's not willing to accept his lot in life, and he has a lot in life. Doesn't he? We would say. But it's easy for us to judge. Jesus gets us on the hook there by saying, well, I would never do that except for the fact that I've done it 100 times. Right? Well, I guess I'm the only one. Why does he get lost? Does he get lost? Is that a good word? Chad started talking about that rightly, that he, crashes down. Is he lost? Is that a good word? Val?
He doesn't have any guidance.
He doesn't have any guidance. You didn't think he needed any guidance, did he? But you're right, he doesn't. Steve?
Anytime you try to take control of your life away from God and put it in your own self, you're going to get lost.
Yeah, and I think that's very much a testament. And by the way, a testament to that very thing. And by the way, please notice that Jesus doesn't say that he was, he was just extravagant. He makes it very clear that he lived a reckless, sinful disaster of a life, right? Dissolute living. He wasted his money. So Jesus' categorization of him is very negative, right?
I always felt like he is very young and doesn't see the consequences to his actions. So much like a 16-year-old may go partying because they want to do that and they don't understand that you're going to have consequences if you're not doing your homework from the night before because you went partying instead. I'm hearing all these other things, and for me, it just kind of comes down to not just naive, but they just he did not have any way to be able to look forward to seeing what his life was going to be like in 2 days from now or 3 days.
He didn't have a long view of things.
I didn't have a view.
I don't want to be a good Christian because I'm older. I said that in a sermon the other day. I know you were hanging on every word. Once again, I don't want to be a good Christian just because I've gotten smarter or because my hip hurts and I don't run as fast as I used to. I'm a better Christian because I move slower. I don't want that. I think I've seen 16-year-olds that were fantastic Christians. I know it's a pretty rare thing, but it is also possible. Translation, I don't want to give him any breathing room on this. He is really to blame for his behavior. Dan, what were you going to say?
The only way you know the stove is hot is to touch it.
If you touch it.
And I'm sure he had delusions of grandeur, and things that you don't earn don't mean as much as the things you have to work for. And so he had a life insufficiency syndrome. He had been around enough to know what he was asking and where he was going to wind up.
Yeah, it's interesting when God tells us that the stove is hot and not to touch it. I don't disagree with you, but he would prefer if we just took him at his word.
Yeah.
Stay home, stay here with me. It's better. There's nothing out there that you can get that's better than here. And he's got to go find it out for himself. But he also doesn't have to go find it out for himself. He could simply trust and believe the Father, that the Father has the best setup for him. Frank?
I'm wondering about the relationship he had with his father, because if the father was really raising him the way he should, he probably wouldn't have all these feelings and insecurities.
Well, but the Father is clearly depicted as God, and so what kind of relationship, your question is a really good one, what kind of a relationship do we have with the Father? When God tells us what he feels about things and how he feels about us, do we listen? Again, this is how we find ourselves in the story, right? Is God instructing you? Are you buying it? Are you believing it? Are you trusting it? Are you writing it off? And if so, how? That's definitely what as he wandered off with his money, I know my dad, but I got to do my own thing. He didn't really mean that. It's not that bad. He's overreacting. He just wants me to stay at home. He doesn't want me to be free. He doesn't want me to be successful. Wasn't he telling himself all of that and more? And not realizing that he wasn't even spending much time even thinking about or reviewing what he had been told. One of the interesting things I find about these, 6 verses, is that Jesus does not depict a conversation happening between them. What does the Father have to do to let him go? And we're talking about God, right? With you and me. What does the Father have to do? He does let him go, but what does he have to do, Beth?
He has to watch you leave with all those blessings.
Yeah, he has to watch you leave with all those blessings. What else? What does he have to do? What does he do?
He allows it.
He allows it. So what's going on? I'm asking you what's going on inside the Father. This is a great moment for us to examine God's situation, God's experience. Danny, what do you think?
What does he have to do to let him go? But he just lets him go.
He
lets him dig his own grave. He lets him go. He catches him out.
What was involved in doing that, Brenda? What do you think?
I think it's like we all have that kid or know that kid where you as a parent or whatever are like, okay, this one's gonna have to learn it the hard way. Like I can tell them and tell them and tell them, but they're not gonna learn until they fall on their face.
How good are you at letting that one go and fall on their face?
Well,
How good is anybody at that? But that's that's what we're getting at. Doesn't he let that happen? He knows this is not a good plan, and he's got to let him go. Todd, what do you think?
I think he has to pull the dagger out of his heart.
Yes.
And use it to carve out property that they all of theirs. He has to carve out that property.
So you're saying he's got to get over his hurt. He's got to do something that he doesn't want to do.
And he knows this is not going to end well.
We're talking about God here, right? Has he ever done this with you? Has he stopped you from doing something that was really wrong? Sure. Has he also let you screw up and fall on your face, as Brenda? Yes, he has, right? And what does it take for God to do that? When does the Father love the Son? We can assume that the Father loves the prodigal son, but he takes the dagger out of his heart, good description, and he gives him a gift that he does not want to give him, right? That he isn't even worthy of having. That is a request born out of, not out of love from the Son, but out of hate, out of desire to be away from the Son. What does the Father have to do in order to be in relationship with this Son who doesn't want to be around him anymore? This is a question for our lives. Because there are certain parts of us, certain histories of us, that have not wanted to be around the Father. We'll never admit that. But the evidence is unmistakable, undeniable, right? And what is the Father going through? He has to resist, he has to overcome the urge to yell at the kid, to argue with the kid, to try to convince him, to try to talk him out of him. He has to suck up this whole desire to protect my child and let him fall on his face. Let him fail. Let him hurt. Let him suffer. Right? Oh my gosh, God doesn't do that. Yes, he does. The Bible, how long do you have? The Bible's full of it, of that stuff. You follow what I'm saying? In our lives are. But do we stop and say, holy cow, you know, when I get into that place and I've fallen on my face, what do? God, where are you? You don't care about me at all. I never stop to think, holy cow, God, I really put you through the ringer on this. I am really sorry. There's no indication of any conversation at all. There's no indication that the Father did that. He obviously he obviously knew it was to no use, right? He obviously knew that there was value in letting him go. building on what Dad said, well, this kid's gonna, I've told him and I've told him and I've told him, and we're at the end. He's just gonna go touch the stove. I don't want him to do that, but he's gonna do it, like Brenda was saying. You're in the story yet? You know? But I want you to think about what the dad is going through, what he is feeling, how much discipline he has to have. And you might say, well, I don't like what the father does. He should have fought with the kid. He should have argued with the kid. Really? Really? Would it have done any good? Would he have listened? Joe, what do you think?
Well, I think most parents have been disappointed and hurt by their kids, either large or small, and at different ages, different things. And not only do you have to have the patience, you have to pray, cry.
Yeah.
There were times I yelled.
Yeah.
And argued, and not okay.
And no matter what you do, you never feel like you got it exactly right?
Right, still, but.
All right. So in what way is the prodigal blessed in this section? Chad.
This guy's got a serious case of the silver spoon syndrome, you know? Like, he comes from a ranch, like you said, and he's got this he doesn't realize who he is, that he comes from the Yellowstone Ranch.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
I know, right? He's got the tattoo, right?
Yeah.
But in what way is he blessed in this moment? Chris?
His father didn't tell him. He didn't put in front of him a situation where he had to think about, I told you so.
Yeah.
He deserved those.
Yeah, he held that back. The father blessed him by keeping his mouth shut. Kind of referencing back to what we said there. Thank you for that. How else is he blessed? Dan?
Yeah, and I think he never closed the door.
The father didn't.
The father never closed the door, and somehow
we're going to get to that.
Yeah, later on.
Yeah,
that became important.
But in this moment here, in these 6 verses, how is the prodigal blessed? Shelley?
It's in part that open door, but it's the groundwork was there that the prodigal son knew that he could go back. However, he rationalized going back.
Yeah.
That he could go back.
It's so amazing how hard this question is. Linda, you want to take a shot at it?
He lets him learn the lesson. He lets him bang his head against the wall as hard as he wants to until he figures it out.
Yeah, the prodigal is blessed again by the father.
Giving him free will. Sure, go.
Yeah.
Go do that.
Chris, how's he blessed?
The father's love was unconditional in the sense that he never said, leave and never enter this door again, or our relationship is over. He never said that.
You guys are all right. There's one I'm not going to move off this question until we're going to stay here all night until we get this one thing. Brenda?
He realized that he was blessed and where he belonged and where he needed to be.
You're getting close.
He realized where his home was.
In a minute he does. You're on verse 17 though. Yeah, Katie.
Because he failed?
Exactly. Gold star to Katie Catoni. I asked this group. I mean, you're all of your answers are right. He's blessed by the Father. All these answers about he's got a father, he's got a home to come back to. You guys are ahead in the story. This is why I stopped here. Okay? How is he blessed in these 6 verses? He's blessed because he failed. There was a famine in the land. He failed. He was starving to death. The greatest blessing to get hitched to Brenda there is that he realized that he had a home to go to. But he only realized that because he didn't succeed. What would have happened if he would have succeeded? I think the inference of this story is if he would have hit the jackpot, he would have lost his soul. Ever been in that kind of history? Or that kind of story? He's blessed because he failed. Because he everything he did or tried did not work. And that created in him a mentality, holy cow, my dad's not such a bad guy. Yellowstone Ranch doesn't look so bad all of a sudden, huh, Chad? But you guys are all on this section over here, because you've all heard the story before. I wanted you to do a hard stop on verse 16, because in verse 16, he's nowhere. He's in the mud with the pigs. He's wasted everything. He's a loser. He's a failure, and everybody knows it. And that starts in him the blessing. He's blessed by not being a success, by being a failure. Oh, we don't want to see that. We don't want to admit that. And Jesus does not want us to miss that. This is one of the prime reasons why Jesus tells this story the way he hammers that home. He's a loser. He rebelled, he ran away from his dad, and he failed of his own volition towards his own goals, of his own will. And then verse 17 comes. And I'm going to ask you these questions. What does the prodigal realize? You guys are already ahead of me, especially Chad. What is the father's response? Let's check out what happens. Those two questions. Verse 17 now. But when he came to himself, what does Jesus mean by that phrase? I've wondered my whole life. But when the prodigal came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare? But here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands. Please notice that last phrase there. Treat me like one of your hired hands. That's his rehearsed speech. So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, how did the father see him when he was still far off? I love this point. The only way he sees him when he's still far off is because the father was looking for him every single day. I wonder, what are you doing? I'm just looking once again to see if my kid is coming back. Well, that loser's never coming back. Yes, he is. Gosh, that's good. When he was still far off, I don't even know where I'm at. Where did I say? I'm preaching so well, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm verse 29. So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. He gets that far in the speech. He does not say, please hire me out. Because the father interrupts him in verse 22. The father said to his slaves, quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And Jesus, with the exclamation point, he was lost. And can you see Jesus' excitement? And then they began to celebrate. And we stopped there. Okay, we stop there. We don't get into the JD portion of the story. What does the prodigal realize? You guys have you've already plowed this field a little bit. Yeah, Todd.
He realizes that the bottom has a rocky reputation.
Yeah.
And he's just lived himself into it.
Right. What else does he realize? Yeah.
He's an idiot.
He's an idiot. What else does he realize? Going back to our first question. Doesn't he realize how valuable home is? And that it can't be found everywhere. We can't just make home of our own will with a wave of a magic wand. We can't make home by buying the right house in the right neighborhood, although that helps. Home is a gift that he had from the moment he came into the world. What does he realize? He realizes how valuable that is. But it took disaster, complete failure and humiliation for him to even see anything at all. He realizes, doesn't he, that he's been blind. Yeah.
He realizes how well his father cared for everyone, not only
Great.
his older brother and himself, but everybody on the farm was well cared for.
Great. Yeah, even my slaves, who are not my father's kids, they have at least a life. Food. They have a decent life that's better than what I've got, right? Even the worst of what I can get from God is better than what I can get all alone,
right?
With my pride. Right? What does he realize? These are just simple questions. Right? What do you think he realizes? Anybody else? What is the father's response? Yeah, Dan.
I think he realizes he's not worthy.
Mm-hmm.
When he asked for all his stuff, he was asking for his rights.
Yeah.
And now he realizes he really doesn't have any.
Yeah.
Anything that unless the Father is going to be gracious and give him whatever he needs.
It is a great contrast, thank you for that point, between what he declares at the beginning. The story begins with him making a declaration. I want my stuff, I want my freedom, I'm giving you, I want to get out of here. And then we wonder whether, I have no question in my mind whether or not he's sincere in his speech. But people have questioned whether he's just practicing a speech and saying the right words without any sincerity. I have no doubt that he has sincerity in this. And I think Jesus tells the parable with the intention that he was sincerely humbled and repentant. Because he did sin against the Father, didn't he? Because it says he gathered his belongings. He doesn't have any belongings. All of his belongings were given to him by the Father. That's why I say the same thing with the offering every week. And I know you guys are sick to death of me doing the same rote things over and over, but I want us to hear it. I say the prayer. I said, we give you back a small portion of what you have given to us. You don't have anything that belongs to you. Neither do I. If God created the universe, it all belongs to him. Amen? Amen? Give an amen from the Baptist over here. Yeah. Brenda.
I see that he goes from I want, or I am, to I need.
Oh.
Don't have.
Yeah. I need. I'm lacking. Right? Lots of realization. What's the Father's response? We can say it in black and white. Well, he runs, he hugs them, and he kisses them. By the way, overt shows of affection like this and running, no Middle Eastern man would do that then or to this day. They walk around in robes. They don't run anywhere. And they don't show emotion like this with this much exuberance. So Jesus wants, his original audience would have noticed how obnoxious the Father is acting. Yeah.
I think it's interesting to say that he ran because in order to run with your robes on and everything else, you have to hold them up in the air. And they would never do that because they never showed their legs.
Yeah, I know. So what is the Father's response then? You're right, but what does that mean? Yeah.
He turns down the son's terms of the son's return.
Yeah. Doesn't even
listen to his terms. Yeah. The son's terms are, I'm not worthy to be called a son. Let me be a servant on the farm.
Yeah.
Right by that.
Right.
Blows it away.
And we can see that because he starts running to see the son before the speech starts.
Yeah.
The Father has already decided how I'm going to receive this kid if I ever get him back. God, he knows he's going to react that way the minute he watches the kid walk away. If I ever get him back, I'm not gonna make him kiss my feet like so many of us do. Right? Or so many of us think that that's what God will do because that's all we've gotten in our lives. This is an obnoxious reaction compared to what we usually experience in life. He knows how he's going to react years ago when the kid left, or however long it was. Dan?
Yeah. The Father never quit loving the Son, and his love was unconditional.
Yeah.
And that was a concept that the Son didn't understand when he left. I think he understood it when he came back. But
yeah, and it's fantastic that the Father feels that. It's even fantasticer that he doesn't keep his pride from expressing that. So do you know what I mean? I love this person. I got to make it pay. I got to get even. He doesn't do that. We do that. I love this kid. I love him with all my heart. I love him with all my energy, all my enthusiasm, and all this kind of stuff. And nothing else that anybody around me says, none of that, as Todd says, that dagger in my heart that I still have the scar from and the pain from, that doesn't, I don't remember that, because this thing, this feeling, this love that I have for this child is more important than how much he hurt me, the injustice that he did to me. And yet, when it comes to our relationships, I feel this about this person, but I'm so angry and I'm so hurt by what they did, I'm going to put that out in front. And then we never get to this part. You guys know what I'm talking about here, right? What does it mean to forgive? It means to put this out in front of all that. Are you still hurt? Has he been betrayed? Sure, that's all part of the history. But the love matters more. Karen, thank you for letting me preach for a while.
And it's what you just said. It's just a little bit different words. I think lots of times when we look at this story, we may say that the Father's response is mercy and grace.
Yeah.
But as you read it now and talk about it, the only thing I see is joy.
Yeah. Celebration.
Yeah.
Right? And no hindrance to that expression of that. Chris?
I think that the father would have said, "You had me on father."
Yeah.
I think that's all.
Yeah.
All we wanted to hear was, "You see me as the father."
The Jerry Maguire line. You had me at
Yeah.
Well, then why did you keep let me go on the speech? I always want to say, show me the money. Yes.
In holding with he doesn't wear his pride as a badge, that he just is openly and accepting, is also a vulnerability that this child could choose to do this again and reject him.
Great point.
And he just left that all open. It didn't matter
Right.
whatever the next is, because this is my now with it.
Right. In other words, he doesn't put some sort of rules. Okay, I'll take you in, but to prevent you from ever doing this again to me. I mean, I love you and I'll take you in and I'll treat you better than a slave, but I'm going to make it so that you can't possibly touch me ever again. Okay, great. That's not love.
There was no barriers.
Right. How many of us don't do that? Right? What he does in a lot of ways. What is the father's response? Compared to us, it's idiotic. It's reckless. Get where I'm going with this? Danny, were you going to say something?
Yeah. His love is not contingent. It's not earned. If anything, it's 180 degrees away from that.
Yeah.
But I see in here a magnificent symmetry. Because at the beginning, the prodigal son is brazenly unrepentant in his dissolute attitude. And at the end, the father is brazenly unrepentant in his love.
Yes. Such great contrast. We get a lesson clearly and easily of how Jesus is trying to he's begging you and me to see. He's saying, this is how the Father is. This is how God is. Please see that. And we're like, oh, yeah, no, I get it. No, you don't. We don't. This is how he feels about you. This is a fantastic display, pure picture of God. As pure as it gets. Oh yeah, no, I got it, JD. No, you don't. We keep forgetting it. And it's also a picture of how we are to treat other people. And to treat ourselves. Right? And we just don't. All right, let's close it out with the JD portion of this. As I've been very critical of myself and my own behaviors. Luke 15, these 8 verses. What offends the older brother? What offends him? What do we learn about free will? Oh, there we go. We'll be here for an hour and a half. Who is the prodigal? Remember what that means? Wasteful, right? Reckless. What is new? All right, let's see if I can cover all this in 15 minutes. Good luck. There's no such thing. All right, verse 25. Now his elder son, we don't forget him. There is an older brother, and Jesus perfectly and beautifully brings him onto the stage now. He mentions him at the beginning, and now here comes the elder brother to play his part. Now his older son was in the field, and when he never left home, he kept on working, right? When he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He, the slave, replied, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he's got him back safe and sound. You had a fatted calf. You would talk, we're not slaughtering that one unless it's a big deal. I mean, you'd have that one earmarked for a long time. All right? Here's verse 28. Then he became angry, refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, listen. Anybody ever pray like this? Listen, Father, for all these years, I've been working like a slave for you. Right? And I have never disobeyed your command, yet you have never given me even a young goat. In other words, like Omaha Steaks would be what he's saying here. It's just slaughter the goat to have a party, right? So that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him. It's calling him a fool, basically. Then the father said to him, son, you're always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate. Emphasis on had. We had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found. And Jesus leaves the next line for us to write. What does the older brother do? What, after that speech, what offends the older brother, though? Yeah.
Both these guys had a huge sense of entitlement. The
Yeah.
younger brother got cured from that. The older brother apparently hasn't been cured yet.
Yeah, and it's just now he's been carrying it around and now he's going to express it.
He's unloading on it.
Yeah. Steve, what offends the older brother?
It's kind of like,
So his sense of entitlement is offended. I'm sorry, Steve, go ahead.
it's kind of like the, I don't know, 13th hour or whatever it's called, worker who still gets a saved an Ari at
Yes.
7 in the morning, and he's offended that he gets rewarded for less work than the older.
Very much like that. And why is he offended? Because he thinks that he gets to set the rules. Right? In that parable, which we will get to eventually. I don't know when, maybe next week. The assumption is I get to set the rules with the stuff that belongs to the father, to the owner of the ranch. Anybody in the story now? I like to think that I know how God should use what belongs to God. And I'm offended by the idea that I don't get to say that. Why else is the older brother offended? Karen?
This is unjust.
What is?
That the younger brother comes back in and gets the fatted calf. There's no justice. There's no
So
justice.
what are you saying that he's offended at? The injustice.
Yes.
Right? Isn't he? Yeah, Linda.
Well, the injustice is that he's been working, and he's never been recognized, acknowledged, or validated by his father. Good job. Here's a goat. Go have a good time.
Yeah.
But you give all the younger brother all this money, and he goes and
Yeah.
have a good time, and then you take him back.
Has the father done something wrong? Or should the older son just have trusted and known that he was loved? Known that he was appreciated? It's a good question because am I sitting here, how much as pastor of this church, how much do you as individual Christians, how much do you have to be validated by God in what you do and how you live your life today? Are you stalled, stuck, not doing because God doesn't stop by and say, hey, JD, you're doing a great job? Anybody like that? Well, yeah, I'm very much like that. Right? Anybody else? But there's another reason why he's offended. He's offended because they're having a party. And more specifically, he's offended by the reason for the party. He stops and says, here's music. There's a party. Okay. What's the party for? Okay. Don't have a problem with the idea of going to a party's great. I've been working all day. This doesn't sound bad. We'll have a couple beers, eat the fatted calf. Wait, what are we celebrating? And you might not think that you're guilty of that, but we are. I mean, how do we feel when somebody that we think is a sinner gets celebrated by God and accepted and forgiven by God? How do we feel about that? You know, my favorite team, Illinois, traveled to Lincoln, Nebraska last Friday.
Don't go there.
I will, because there's a point here. And they won in overtime. And all of my beloved friends who root for Nebraska, and I root for Nebraska too, but I was born and raised in Illinois, so it's just the heart wants what the heart wants. It's not easy watching those guys on your turf celebrating and high-fiving and winning. And the pastor of the church kept a very low profile. All kidding aside, because I didn't want to get beat up, and I might get. The point is that we get upset, as silly as it sounds, not by the idea of a party. We want the party to be for us, for our team, right? We're not happy watching Illinois dance around on Osborne Field, and they did. Doesn't make me happy at all. Not the best perfect illustration, but you get the point, right, Joe?
I think the older brother felt this was, the whole thing, everything was unfair.
It is.
And I used to relate to the older brother.
Yeah, I do too.
I stayed in Omaha with my parents, and my sisters moved away.
Yeah.
So I got stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I gained things too, but
Yeah.
there were times I thought,
Yeah.
I'm doing it all,
Yeah.
you know, with the help.
Yeah.
But when I was in
I got to go real fast, Joe. I'm sorry.
Years ago, Julie Hersler came to the circle I was in, and I didn't know Julie very well. at the
Yeah.
time. And we were talking about this. I mean, this was in her, her study, and she said the older brother, nothing was taken away from
Right.
the older brother, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
things changed.
Epiphany. But here's news about the older brother. He's right. He's not wrong. It's unfair. But it is unfair. That's the definition of grace. You sing the song. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. It's what you're singing is, it's so great how unfair God is to me. Because if he was fair to me, I'd really be in a problem. You follow what I'm saying? And I'm sorry to hurry you along. I hope we're still friends. But I'm trying to touch I've got lots of bases that I'm trying. He's right. But he's not right to get upset about it. Because as Steve pointed out, it isn't his to get upset about it. It doesn't belong. The Father is having the party with the Father's stuff, according to how the Father is feeling. Is it unfair? Is it idiotic? Is it nonsensical? Yep. You're right. But you should still join the party. And that's what the Father comes out and essentially tells him. All right? We had to celebrate. Right? Because this is how it works. Dan?
What's more important, rules or relationship?
Yeah, exactly.
The older son is into the rule thing.
Yeah.
And the father just loves his son and is happy to have him back.
Right.
And restore the relationship that had been broken when he left.
It's Les Miserables, Jouvert. He can't get over, Jouvert. He just can't get to grace. He just has to be doing rules all the time. It's fantastic. Victor Hugo, nailed it. What do we learn about free will? Does the younger son exercise free will? Absolutely. Does the older son exercise free will by staying?
Yes.
Yeah, he does, but I'm not sure he recognizes that he used his free will by staying. Right? We also realize, I hope, as the Calvinist that I am, is that we have free will. There's no denying that human beings have free will, but the free will of the Father is greater. The free will of the guy who's got the stuff, the free will of the Creator, the free will of the Father is greater than our own. Because the Son, his free will is to come back to the home and be a slave. Yeah, great. My free will is greater. Right? Well, you shouldn't have a party. You're an idiot for having a party. My free will is greater. We're going to have a party because I want to have a party for this son of mine, this child of mine who was dead. Right? It doesn't matter. It is great that the father does not go out into the field and say, you know, I really want to have a party, but I've got to go out into the field and find JD and find out if it's okay with him. No, JD comes back and finds out that there's a party, and JD's got to figure it out. Right? And too many times, I don't like what that guy is getting from God. I've wasted too much time on that. Anybody with me? No, I'm the only one. Who is the prodigal in this story? Todd. You are. Good answer. That's a really tough answer to beat. I wasn't expecting that. I'm going to give you a gold star, too. Of course, none of these gold stars actually exist.
Where can we cash them?
Yeah, you can't cash them in. They're worthless. But all the rest of these people are jealous of the two of you guys. Who's the prodigal in this story? Steve, what do you think?
The father is.
Father is. Why?
He gives up half his inheritance knowing that it's going to be squandered, and then he kills a fatted calf for the goat for the person that did it.
Isn't it the truth? Isn't he the prodigal? Who else is the prodigal? The younger son has always, for 2,000 years, been labeled the prodigal. Is he the prodigal? Yeah. In a lot of ways, he's the least of the prodigal. He has an era, a certain amount of months or a couple of years, where he lives completely wastefully. A window, right? But the father, I'm with Steve. He is just wildly, according to my terms, wasteful with what he's got, with his grace. Isn't he? Thanks be to God you are. How about the older brother?
Yeah.
Is he a prodigal? Chris, what do you think?
Of course he is. I mean, he just missed a perfect example of what he's supposed to do.
Right.
And he's still angry over it. He just had it lived out in his life.
Right. And to Linda's point, you started about 5 minutes ago. Let's say he's 40 years old. I don't know. I mean, he's lived that entire time, never even realizing what he had. Never realizing where he was. This is the line that the father's, you're always with me. Everything I have is yours, JD. You don't even have to think about it. You don't even think about it. That's wasteful, isn't it? It's prodigal, isn't it? If you can't find yourself in here tonight, I don't know why I can't stand on my head more than this. It's just easy, isn't it? It's so perfect. Do you see the divine in what we're doing tonight? It's too perfect. In what is new? Well, in a way, we could say everything is new, but we could say nothing is new. It's still a father, and two sons, same place, same ranch, same slaves. Fatted calf is gone. And then we could say everything is new. Everybody has a different perspective. We are left to wonder, though, how the older son is going to respond after this. Jesus stops the story, lets us speculate that. We are left to wonder, somebody brought it up, whether or not, I think it was Shelley, brought it up, whether or not the younger son is just going to do it again. And we know he might, right? We're left to wonder. But we're left to figure that out and express that and write that in our own lives. 7:30 gets here fast, doesn't it? Who do we need to pray for? Greg.
Sarah, Nancy, and Vaughn.
Sarah, Nancy, and Vaughn. Annie.
Kelly.
Kelly. Dan.
Stella and Sylvia.
Stella and Sylvia. Frank.
Norm and Carol.
Norm and Carol. Kathy.
Teresa.
Teresa, thank you. Danny.
Eli and Gail.
Eli and Gail. Beth. An unknown soldier. We know how to do that one. Anybody else? Katie.
Jake and Maggie.
Jake and Maggie. Whatever your name is here. Shelley.
Rob, Nikki, Sophie, and Katie, and Kathy.
So we had people watching us tonight?
We had people watching us. Those are all my names.
Oh.
Nice lot of them.
Okay, there you go. Who else needs our prayers? I love doing this on Wednesday nights. I really do, because we laugh and we learn. It's just the best thing of my week. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for bringing us all together around this scripture. We could do it again for an hour and we get so much more. Thank you for that incredible blessing. Bless it to find good soil in our lives and in our hearts. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right.